Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Turtle Wins the Race Home-Based Business Podcast. I'm Kara Buntin. I've had a home-based business since 1999, so that's what we talk about on this podcast. Today, I want to talk about a thing called magical thinking. And magical thinking is a concept that, it kind of pertains to kids. Like little kids think that if they think something, something will happen. And like when my kids were little, the teachers would tell them, like we know that there's going to be snow tomorrow. So the teachers would tell them, if you wear your pajamas inside out and backwards, it'll snow tomorrow. So they would come home all excited because they had this magical way to make it snow. Meanwhile, I'm looking on the weather. I'm like, yeah, it's going to snow. We know that. There's a snowstorm coming. But little kids will still think that it snowed because they put their pajamas on backwards and inside out. Okay, that's magical thinking. Adults also do magical thinking in many ways. You think that because you wore your favorite, I haven't quite given up yet sweatshirt. It's not really a sweatshirt, it's a sweater, but it feels like a sweatshirt, that something good will happen, or you feel like your team won because you wore your lucky hat. That's magical thinking, all right? So everybody does some sort of magical thinking at some point. It's not anything new, but when it comes to your business, you really need to kind of back off the magical thinking. And the main thing that I see people do, and I'm not sure if this really goes with magical thinking as opposed, the classic definition of it. But just thinking that there's one thing that if you do that, it's going to make you successful. This one thing, if I put this one thing in the title of my listings, everyone will find it. It's going to be on page 1. If I do just this one thing, if I move this paragraph over here, if I use periods instead of slashes in my titles, it's that kind of thing that I see. And it's basically what it kind of comes down to is just paying attention to these little minute details that really don't matter much. But you think that if you do this one magical thing, it's going to skyrocket your Etsy sales, which is one of my least favorite phrases because it's silly. Okay, but anyway, what you need to do instead of magical thinking is just understand that sometimes you can try something and it works because something else happened, and sometimes you try something and it works because it worked. Sometimes you try something and it works because it kind of hits on a human behavior, like the scarcity thing when you talk about, last 3 available, the sale's going to be over. That's an urgency thing. There's certain things that you can do to make people behave in a certain way, but that's not magical thinking. That's just human behavior. But when you're starting to think if I use slashes instead of periods, it's going to make a difference. That's really kind of grasping at straws. So what you need to do, whether it's a website or Go Imagine or Etsy or whatever, just understand that there are certain things that are structurally important and there are certain things that really aren't. And as long as you focus on the things that are important and that are working, it'll be okay. And you have to kind of figure things out. You can test things out. Your audience is going to be different than my audience. My audience is tough. My audience is limited. You might be selling something that's more purchased. You might be selling things that people use every day and they run out of and you have to buy more of. So you have to kind of know your own audience and figure out what they really want and not what you think they want based on magical thinking. So the first thing I would say is to watch my podcast from last week if you haven't and do more of what's actually working, but you have to figure out what's actually working before you can do more of it. Don't rely on assumptions. You have to actually go in and see what you did that made people buy something. Did you send out 3 emails a week instead of 1? Did you send out a sale every week that's on specific items? I know people who do that. But figure out what works for your audience and then do more of it. And figure out what platforms work for you and spend your time there. Don't just spread yourself too thin and spend time on things that don't work, because you can have the idea that if you spend time everywhere, then you'll get more traffic, but that's not necessarily true. And you might be getting traffic to places on your website, which is what I was talking about last week. You might be getting traffic to places on your website that don't bring you product sales. And if your goal is to bring you product sales, then it's not traffic that you really need. So make sure that you're actually looking at reality when you're looking to figure out what is working now, and then do more of that and spend your time doing the things that actually do bring you results. It's pretty simple, And it's not magical thinking. It's just actually analyzing things thoroughly and without bias. Because a lot of times I think we go into it thinking, oh, well, this is working. And then you really look at it and it isn't. But you like doing it, so you don't want to believe that and you just keep doing it. Right. The second thing I would say, and I'm actually looking at this from it's kind of a Pinterest way of seeing it, is that instead of thinking about keywords, think about topics, find new angles. And the reason that I say this is a Pinterest thing is that I've been using Pinterest more, and I've been really, this year I'm going to focus on Pinterest. That's my one big platform that I'm going to work on hard. But you need to look at topics on Pinterest as opposed to keywords. And yeah, keywords are important, but if you have the same keywords over and over and over and you don't expand into different topics, you're going to hit a ceiling of traffic and you won't be able to break through that. It's the same thing selling products online. If you have the same keywords for everything, it just doesn't reach other audiences who might actually use your products, and it's going to limit you. So think about topics instead of keywords, and the keywords will go with the topics. But you need to kind of start thinking about concepts and find an angle. Find an angle for your products as opposed to just saying, what is it? So, for example, let me think of a good example. Let's say that I have. Well, let's say that I sell edible butterflies. Let's just use that as an example, because that actually is a good example. There's a limited market for cake decorations that are butterflies that you can eat. It just is. There's a limited market. So instead of saying edible butterflies, because I don't know how people search for that, what you need to do is start looking at other reasons why people might buy them. So instead of just thinking that's what they are, I have to start thinking about, and I do this anyway, but you have to think, what type of party would they be good for? So we've got birthdays, baby showers, graduations, because butterflies, let's see, weddings, obviously. People like wedding butterfly cakes. But then there's also things like retirement parties, specific types of baby showers, because there are a few themes that go with baby showers that are butterfly related. So you can get a little bit more niche, right? It's like narrowing down, kind of looking beyond what you're normally thinking about, and just looking for different types of framework. So you have to kind of look at the framework that you have around your product. And I tell people this in my Pinterest class. If you sell something that's jewelry or accessories, don't just talk about the jewelry, talk about fashion and styling them, how to style an outfit, and you use your products in that pin, right? You use your products to be part of the larger framework. So thinking about it that way, you're kind of expanding, but you're also narrowing down the focus, but it's a topic thing as opposed to just a keyword. So start thinking in terms of topics, and it might give you ideas about keywords to find. All right, so just that's my second thing. The third thing that I think that you should do to avoid magical thinking is be aware of changes on the platforms that you're selling on. Because a lot of times, especially on Etsy, they change things so often. People will say, oh, I changed my title and this happened. And they think it's because they changed their title. But it's really because Etsy's behind the scenes kind of turning up the meter of what's important. And your listing happens to have shorter processing time than other ones. So all of a sudden your listing is getting more visibility because of that, or because of something else that Etsy's doing. It has nothing to do with the title change that you made. But you need to be aware of what the platform is doing so that you don't fall into the trap of thinking that there is something that you should be doing to every single one of your listings when it has nothing to do with that. So let's say that I think that, let's say I went in and put the word red in front of every single one of my listings. The very front of the title has the word red in it, even if there's no red in the product. And when I did that, my sales went up. And I'm thinking, wow, it's because I put that word in there. Now, it could be because it's wedding season and all of a sudden people are coming to my shop and buying decorations because it's wedding season. It has nothing to do with anything Etsy did or with anything that I did, but I'm attributing it that, because I put the word red in there, that all of a sudden I'm starting to sell more. Or it could be that Etsy has decided that they want the shorter processing times, like I was talking about, like during the holidays last year. which was a month ago. During the holidays last year, they specifically said we're going to be increasing the importance of a short processing time so that customers get their stuff faster. They said that specifically, and a lot of people missed it because they just announced it in the announcement section of the Etsy forums. But if you put the word red in front of all of your titles, and then all of a sudden you're getting more orders because Etsy's looking at processing time, it has nothing to do with your titles. And you don't know that Etsy did that. So you think, yeah, it's because I put the word red in front of my titles. So you need to be aware, like you really need to learn the platform that you're selling on. It's important just to know what's going on. Even if it's not, you don't have to do a deep dive into everything that they do, but you need to be aware of changes that they're making so that you can know whether you need to change something or whether a change that you made is or isn't the reason that things happen the way that they did. And I know that people who will go in and like change all of their titles and tags, they'll change all the keywords, they'll change everything. And then they'll say, oh my God, everything, my sales stopped, everything stopped. Well, it could be because you did that, because it might actually be, but it could also be, let's say that there's a recession and people have just stopped buying things, or they're selling something that's really trendy and it's not trendy anymore. So just because you do one thing doesn't mean that everything else is the result of that. It's a causation, correlation, difference, magical thinking. So I just wanted to bring up magical thinking because I see a lot of that in Facebook groups, and it's just a lot of it is just people who are desperate to find the one magic thing that's going to make their sales skyrocket. And there is no one thing. It's just there's a lot of things that you need to do the right way, like putting things in the right place, put things in place the right way over time. And then you don't really need to worry about it because the foundation will be there and you can go in and change your pictures or do whatever you want to improve your listings. But you don't need to worry about that one magic step because it really doesn't exist. All right, give this video a thumbs up, leave me any questions, and I will talk to you later.